afternoon or morning or evening, whatever the case may be. So the purpose of this video is really twofold. One is I want to give you some background information on Mexican Gothic and the yellow wallpaper and the ways in which they relate to each other. And two is I want to give you some detailed instruction about how to begin writing your literary analysis essay for those two texts. So first of all, give me a moment here to open up our presentation. Okay, so first of all, let's think about these two women. These are two authors. They're very different in a lot of ways. So let's start with a question. What do these two women have in common? Well, at first glance, they're quite different. They are writing in different centuries. One is a dead white woman, the other is very much alive Latinx woman. The woman on the right is Sylvia Morena Garcia, who is a Mexican American author of the 21st century, and she's still very much alive. She is your author of a Mexican Gothic. The woman on the left is Charlotte Gilman Perkins. And she's writing in the 19th century, before women's suffrage, so before women could even vote. But they're both what I would call feminist writers, and they're both using Gothic tropes in order to illustrate the condition of women in society. So the yellow wallpaper was written and takes place in the 19th century. The narrator is a woman who loves to write, but her husband won't let her. Her husband is a doctor, and he's very controlling. He believes that she is suffering from a nervous disorder, or what we would today call a mental illness. So he takes her out into the country and basically secludes her in this room with really nothing to do and nobody to talk to. But there's this grotesque yellow wallpaper in this room, and she keeps looking at it and thinking that she sees some really macabre things happening in the wallpaper. And in the end, she becomes just convinced and obsessed with the idea that there's a woman trapped behind this awful wallpaper, and that woman is desperately trying to claw her way free. Well, really, the woman trapped behind the wallpaper is, of course, her. So the wallpaper is symbolic, and her being in that room is symbolic of the oppression of women in her society. And you'll notice that as you read the yellow wallpaper, it's going to seem very familiar, and that is because in Mexican Gothic, Catalina is similarly obsessed with the wallpaper, except the wallpaper is green in this scenario. She's also in a Victorian house. She's also under the thumb of a very controlling husband who won't let her do anything. And she is also being treated by doctors for a nervous disorder. So, what you want to do with this literary analysis essay is to find some common elements in the stories and mark the text. So, what I would do is I would read through and then highlight or put those little yellow and orange flags on certain parts of the text that you might want to use in your essay. A lot of people don't like to write in their books, and so if that is the case, then the little sticky flags work quite well. But what you're looking for are passages that, first of all, talk about the wallpaper, but also passages that appear to be discussing this idea of the oppression of women. And you would do the same thing with the yellow wallpaper. So here, I'm looking at this and I see she claims in the letter that he is not only poisoning her, but ghost walk through the halls. Tell me, does that sound like a reliable account? And so there we are finding a passage that is talking about Catalina's mental illness. It's very similar to the mental illness that is described in the yellow wallpaper. And so that might be something that I would mark and then use later in my essay. The requirements for your literary analysis essay are that it fall between 750 and 1,000 words. And that is really just an estimate, you guys. You do not need to delete words if you're at 749. Okay. I wouldn't be much below 700 though, because if that's the case, then you probably have to dig a little bit deeper in your analysis. You must have a strong thesis that talks about the treatment of women in both texts, sustained close readings, which we have already talked about with our previous assignments, and then at least 3 examples of textual evidence from each text. So 3 pieces of textual evidence from the yellow wallpaper and an additional 3 from Mexican Gothic. So you're going to end up with at least 6 in-text citations, at least 6 pieces of textual evidence. And this is organized into 3 paragraphs or subtitled sections.